Been, an awful stretch here for the sector. Is there any hope?
Oh, yeah, there's hope because I think we're hopeful that demand will snap back pretty quickly. And I'm sure you're aware of what the New York governor was saying, Mr. Cuomo, this morning, that the end to an extent, or at least the peak, is in sight. So I think things will come back. There will be an overhang of inventory, which is really the focus on the OPEC Plus agreement. I don't think anyone thinks you can solve today's oil market problem, but what we're hoping is that some sort of throttle back, particularly by Saudi, will avoid a total overflow of inventories, basically on a 4 to 6 to 1 year view.
Right, Paul. If there were people who came to you and said, "Look, I think energy's oversold, or I think it's going to, finally experience a rebound, and I want to know where I can put my money to work in the space that is relatively safe," and what would you recommend?
Well, we're very much in the Permian. We're in the best quality acreage. We do think there's potential for consolidation amongst the very best names with low leverage. The names like Pioneer, Diamondback Fang, Parsley, Concho, they all offer, we think, long-term attractive valuation and long-term sustainability. The problem is whether or not you want to risk buying something with a lot of debt on the basis that the market surprises to the upside. And that's a knotty one, and I wouldn't advise that necessarily into, as Brian said, the potential for no agreement from OPEC.
Right. So, Brian, I want to bring you in with that question as well. I imagine some of these talks must already be taking place, or are the companies hoping they can just ride it out? Because we've seen the bankruptcies already beginning.
Yeah, and by the way, shout out to Paul. Paul, by the way, is one of the only sell-side analysts that I've ever seen at an OPEC meeting. Most just do it from New York. Paul actually gets on a plane and goes. And it matters. I'll tell you why it matters. Like Halima Croft and Paul and others that actually physically go there, because you get to learn the nuance of the language that they use. We parse these Fed statements for every change in wording. The Saudis, they're the same way. They talk about a fair agreement. That means that's code for U.S., you need to practice what you preach as well. Behind the scenes, I'm sure a lot of people are making a lot of calls. The head of the IEA has been active on Twitter saying, I called Canada. I called Norway, all these countries trying to get together. But to Paul's point, if there's demand destruction of 30 million barrels a day, and even if everybody gets together and cuts 15, Kelly, you don't need to have gone to Virginia Tech's amazing engineering department to know that there's 15 million barrels a day still of oversupply. It will slow down that excess fill of inventory that Paul referred to. It won't stop it. The only thing that can stop it, truly, is if this stupid virus gets killed sooner than later.
Yeah.
We just put it away and the U.S. economy comes back up and demand comes back. Half of all gasoline demand is gone in a month. One half.
No, it's wild. So, Paul, in that, give us the two scenarios. If there's no deal, or if there is a deal or a sign of one, where does the oil price go?
Well, I think we're finding support definitely here. But the other thing that we're looking at closely is that the physical markets are trading much below the paper markets, which is obviously a major concern, and we'll actually be rolling the oil contract this week, so do be careful of that one. I would throw in there that there is a bull case for natural gas here, because clearly you're going to have to reduce U.S. supply as part of this overall process. And then ultimately, if we do get an agreement, the reality is the Saudi barrels are already on the water, and they're going to keep coming right through May and into June pretty much. So I think that we're at best going to bounce around here until we get through COVID and into driving season, hopefully, and everyone has very happy staycations at local hotels, or rather distant hotels.
Yeah. Would you, Paul, be going back to OPEC once, when to you is the all clear that it's okay to go to these meetings in person again?
Well, firstly, let me shout out to Brian, Brian naturally stands out at the OPEC meeting, not just because he's a good couple of inches taller than almost anyone else there. I'm happy to go straight away. I'm very, very frustrated for my teenage kids. I feel it's a really rough situation for my soccer-playing son, Harry, and I'm desperate for us all to get out there. In fact, I misinterpreted what Mr. Cuomo said today. He said, let's go out for a walk and relax in the sun, and I was all ready to head out before he suddenly said, no, that's not the way you're meant to be thinking. I'm fairly fatalistic about this. I realize the risk to people, but I'm more than ready to head to Vienna. It's just that, as Brian can testify, the headquarters are still shut, and so as long as everything's shut, there's not much we can do.
Yeah. Well, Paul, best wishes in the meantime, and we appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Brian, thanks to you as well. Superstar of the OPEC meetings there, Brian Sullivan and Paul Sankey.